Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. This is our presentation on antecedent intervention strategies, how to prevent problem behaviors from happening. I hope you're here today because you're probably thinking that you have a student at your school that you're struggling with what to do with all these challenging behaviors. I hope this presentation will be informative for you, and then you'll be able to come back to your school with some strategies to help deal with those situations that are happening right now at your school. My name is Vanessa Neufeld. I'm the K-8 ESS coordinator at Vancouver Christian School. And I have the pleasure of working with some amazingly talented EAs. Two are with me today. Later you'll be able to hear from Crescentia Goanna and Ribka Miliana, who are also EAs at Vancouver Christian School, and they'll be able to tell you what it looks like to apply some of these strategies with students at our school. So let's start from the beginning. Let's start about the traditional view of behavior. The way that kids were normally viewed in the past were that they were inherently bad kids. That these kids were dumb, they're worthless, they're stupid, that they're causing these problems because they want to, that these are enduring static states. Then that what we did as teachers and principals was try to respond to the problem behaviors. And we usually did this by punishment, being reactive and telling the students to stay in from recess, that you're suspended from school, or like the picture there, where Bart Simpson would have to write lines after school. This is usually what we tried to do to solve the problem behavior. A lot of the time, our focus was on trying to fix the individual, and that they chose to misbehave, so if our punishments were strong enough, maybe they'll choose to behave better. And that we assume that these students would just know better. Why are they doing these things? That they're in grade 6 by now. They should know how to behave. And we tried to reduce the occurrence of behavior through punishment. And that we always use labels to try to explain behavior. It's because the student has autism. It's because the student has this condition. And then because of this, that's why they're behaving that way. And that's what we tried to do. We tried to look at students as static states that are unchanging. Well, what we found was that it didn't really work out very well. We still had students causing problem behaviors, and the punishments weren't really helping increase likelihood of things that are happening going the way that we wanted them to. So now comes the new way of understanding behavior. We're looking at things differently now, thinking that maybe students want to do well, but maybe they lack the skills and have learned maladaptive behavior patterns, and that's why they're doing what they're doing. We're also learning that behavior is communicative, that students who are exhibiting problem behaviors are just trying to get their needs met. And maybe the way that they've learned how to get their needs met is through problem behavior because they don't know any other better way to do it. So instead of trying to fix the system, fix the setting, we're looking at fixing the skill deficits. So instead of looking at the child and thinking that something is wrong with them, we're looking at the system. How is our school? How can we do it differently so that child is not exhibiting problem behavior? Is there some skill that they're missing that we could teach them, that they would have a new way of responding? Can we reduce the occurrence of behavior through antecedent strategies, teaching strategies, and consequences? We're looking at the fact that behavior is adaptive, that for this student, engaging in this problem behavior is actually serving a purpose. It's helping them get their needs met. And then we're learning that behavior is learned, and that with all behaviors, new behaviors can be taught. So instead of being reactive and responding to problems with sanctions and increasing punishments, how about we try looking at being proactive? Can we prevent problem happening in the first place? So why should we look at things preventatively? Well, we know that it's a lot less work to put out sparks than a forest fire. And that when we focus on sanctions and negative punishment, we end up having usually a lot of other problems, like respondent aggression, negative modeling, and behavior substitution. A lot of the time when we solve problem behaviors by adding a punishment, the student usually finds another way that's usually not another great way to get their needs met. And sometimes, if school becomes such a punitive place, or a certain class becomes such a punitive thing, the child starts avoiding going to that class, or avoiding going to school altogether. And a lot of the time, punishment is often people or situation specific. Students knows that when I go to math class, that teacher is not going to let me do whatever behavior, so I'm just going to avoid that math class, or avoid that math teacher, or just be good during math class. But it doesn't actually solve the problem altogether. Punishment doesn't really teach the person more skills. It's just telling them what they can't do, not what they should do instead. And really is less work in the long run to focus on proactively what are some things that we can do to build skills in these individuals. There are really positive changes in the school culture when we focus on being proactive instead of on punishment. There's decreases in discipline referrals and suspensions when we focus on being proactive. So if you're not convinced yet, let's look at the research. If you're interested, positive behavior intervention supports is a great framework of looking at being proactive. Our school is kind of undergoing the journey right now on PBIS and trying to implement that K-12 wide. So we're at the stage where we're trying to figure out what it looks like for students to implement a plan where we're trying to be proactive for the majority of the time. We know that the research says that when we are proactive, that there are positive outcomes for students, staff, and school culture. There's increased social, emotional, and behavioral competence. Positive, predictable, and safe environments that promote strong interpersonal relationships. Now, who doesn't want that in our school? And if you're not convinced yet, our middle school principal has a podcast called Teachers on Fire, where he interviewed myself as well as a whole bunch of other educators talking about PBIS and how it can build school culture. So today, I'm just going to be focused on antecedent and setting event strategies. But this is actually part of a bigger plan called PBS plans, Positive Behavior Support Plans. So PBS plan looks at everything all together, setting event strategies, antecedent strategies, teaching new behaviors, and consequence strategies. Today, our main focus is how can we be proactive? What is the part of the plan? But just so you know, this is usually part of a bigger plan. So let's go back to the beginning and talk about the ABC chain. Antecedents are what happened before a behavior. The behavior is what we see in the classroom a lot. The yelling, the screaming, walking out of class, breaking a pencil, throwing a chair. These are the things that we see that are challenging behaviors. The consequence is what happens after. So for us to understand how A, B, and C are connected helps us understand how we can change the situation so we don't end up having those problem behaviors. It's also important to understand the functions of behavior. From our understanding now, behavior is functional. The person engaging in that behavior, they're doing it because it's helping them get their way and get their needs met. And so if they're trying to communicate something through their problem behavior, we need to figure out why and what they're trying to access so that we can give them new and better ways to get their needs met. So usually it goes down to 4 functions of behavior. It could be either sensory, escape, attention, or tangible. Tangible just means they're one trying to get something. So usually it's either one of these things very clearly, or sometimes it could be a mix of more than one function. Looking at then now positive and negative reinforcement. It's important to understand how this plays into behavior as well, because students engage in behavior because it gets them what they want or it gets them out of something they don't want. And positive and negative don't mean good or bad. It just means that positive means you're adding something to the situation that usually they like, so it increases the likelihood of them doing that thing again. So in class, you might think things like a high five, getting stickers, extra time on the playground. When a student acts appropriately and then they receive these things that they like, it's more likelihood that they will be able to act in this way in the future. Whereas negative reinforcement is usually there's an aversive or undesirable situation or setting that they're in, and that action that they do gets them out of that situation. So when your alarm goes off in the morning and it's a really loud, buzzing, annoying sound, you hit that snooze button and that sound goes away. That's actually your behavior is being negatively reinforced, which means the next time your alarm goes off at 6 a.m. the next morning, you do the same thing. So the same principle can happen in the classroom. If a child is sitting in the classroom and they hate circle time, and they're wiggling around on the floor because they can't handle it, and then the teacher notices that they're being really squirmy and fidgety and says, "Charlie, why don't you go sit outside?" And then he gets out of that aversive situation for them, chances are next time when he's sitting in circle time and he doesn't want to be there, he's going to engage in those problem behaviors again because he knows it gets him out of a situation that he doesn't like. So a lot of the time we inadvertently reinforce behaviors we don't want to see because they're being negatively reinforced. So what we're talking about today are setting events. These are also what we call precipitating events. They're not the direct antecedent, it's not the direct trigger that makes these behaviors happen in the classroom, but they're conditions that make the behavior more or less likely to occur. They indirectly influence the likelihood of behavior occurring because it alters the value of reinforcement. If the child really wants to get out of that class because there's all these things going on, having the setting events in place makes it more likely they're going to engage in those problem behaviors. So it's really important for us to understand what setting events are so that we can be aware of them, so that we can alter our behavior to decrease the likelihood that your child will engage in problem behavior. Most of the time, setting events don't happen in the same context as where the challenging behavior happens. A lot of the time, these things are happening at home or in the hallways, at recess, before they come into class and exhibit problem behavior. I love the illustration that Kristen Wines does about talking about the stress backpack. She has this illustration and analogy that kids come to school not just with a backpack full of your pencils and your binders and your books, but also a stress backpack. And in their stress backpack are all the things that they're taking with them to school that's weighing on them. And the more stress that we have at any given moment, the more sensitive we are to additional stressors. So stress doesn't simply add up, it multiplies. So if we understand that children coming to school may have had more things going on in their lives and that they're being more sensitive to triggers, telling them to clean up their favorite activity earlier than usual or tell them to transition from one thing to the other might just be too much. So another important part I want to emphasize, and we're going to be talking about later in our case presentations too, is understanding of the behavior iceberg. What we see in classes and what we see is the behavior. We see the child crying, the tantrum, all the problem behaviors that we're dealing with. That's what we see at the top. But what we don't see is what's happening underneath. What's going on below the surface? Are there social skill deficits? Are they having a lot of anxious thoughts? We talked about this in my previous presentation. Some of these kids are coming with a storm cloud of awful thoughts and they're thinking they can't focus. How are they feeling? Are there anger issues? Is there something going on at home? These are all things that we can't see, but kids are coming to school with. And Kelly Bartlett, who's a parenting coach, says this: like an iceberg, the bulk of behavior's mass is found below the surface. It is what gives rise to the part that is visible. When a child's basic needs are met, the behavior looks good. If a child's needs are not met, though, he may feel insecure, afraid, angry, and detached. The behavior that shows them is what we call unacceptable, but his needs are valid. His feelings are valid, but he's just misguided in his attempts to rectify them. So what must we do as educators is, in the face of misbehavior, remember that 90% of what is going on is below the surface. So for us, what we're talking about today is those things that are happening below the surface. And these are the different types of setting events. The first one are physiological conditions. When the student shows up, they might be hungry, they could be thirsty, they could have went to bed really late last night and be really tired, they could be on pain medication, they may be feeling somatic pains in their body, they could be feeling sick, or they could be anxious about lots of things. These are things that make it really hard to focus on in class if these things are happening. Another category are called ecological conditions. This is the time of day, the noise. As you can see in the picture, they're crowding. This is what our high school hallways look like, and every hallway looks like when the bell rings. There's a lot of students, and for some, this is a huge setting event that makes them feel anxious or uncomfortable and leads to problem behavior. For some students, having weather that is dreary and dark, it contributes to problem behavior. Do the student get choice throughout the day? Is there predictability, or is there a lack of routine? These are some things that could be happening that affects the likelihood that the child is going to engage in problem behavior. This is the last part of setting events: behavior histories and relationships. These are things that sometimes stay very hidden below the surface unless you have a child who's willing to share. Maybe they had an adverse interaction. I know that the morning routine, getting to school, is really stressful. I have 2 kids of my own, and trying to get them out the door at a certain time with them clothed, brush their teeth, and their lunches packed, that's a big deal. It's a struggle. And so sometimes I don't speak to them in the way that I want to as a good parent. Sometimes there's yelling involved. And so sometimes kids arriving to school having had a really terrible morning and interactions that weren't particularly nice. And then they're asked to go do some work that's particularly hard for them. That could be a really big setting event. Another thing could be rapport with the individual presenting the task. In our schools, our kids come across many different teachers, EA, and staff, and there might be some that they get along better with than other ones. Also, having a sick family member, or immediate or past trauma. There might be a divorce in the family, or there might be a death, or maybe abuse. These are things that sometimes stay very hidden unless the child is willing to talk about it. And what we see is the effects of that, them holding and processing these big thoughts and big emotions. And sometimes our kids are coming from unstable home environments. There might be a lot of conflict in the house. Mom and dad might not be divorced, but there might be a lot of arguing going on. And the child might just have low self-esteem. They might have a history of not being able to accomplish anything they set out to do. So why would they want to try that math if in the past they've never been able to be good at it? So when we have these setting events, being tired, hungry, ecological events, and these behavior histories, coupled with the antecedent, which is the thing that occurs immediately before the problem behavior, it could be the teacher saying, do it now, pick up that paper, I need you to get your books out. It could be a timer going off. It could be the presence of a quiz, a test, or it could be a transition. So those setting events, paired with antecedents, often leads to behavior. So this is what we're seeing in the classroom. And so sometimes we're in shock because the behavior that happens seems so out of context. All I said was to take out your math books. All I said was it's time to line up to go to gym. Why is the child having such a big explosion in terms of emotion and behavior when all I said was to line up and go for recess? But what we don't see are the things that are underneath the surface. So what we're going to talk about right now are the categories of antecedent strategies that we could do to prevent the explosions of behavior. They usually fall into 3 different categories. So the first one I'm going to talk about is eliminating, minimizing, and neutralizing setting events. How can we also withhold or change the antecedent so that it doesn't appear to be so aversive? The last thing is, if we know there's setting events in place, how can we increase reinforcement so it doesn't become such a problematic issue? So here's the first one. How can we eliminate, minimize, or neutralize those setting events? How can we make the stress backpack lighter? How can we help that storm cloud that's happening and be less of a storm cloud? If the child's showing up at school tired, hungry, or sick, what are some things that we can do to solve that? Some things are really easy. Can the child have a snack before it's actually snack time? We used to have a student who was younger, who had really, really late nights, and he had sleep disorder. So sometimes when he came to school, he wasn't ready to start yet, and he would actually have a nap before his day would start. But that 45-minute nap in the morning meant that he was able to be functional during the rest of the day. So it could be a small thing like that. In terms of ecological conditions, what are some things that we can do to change the setting event? Can we give them a visual or written schedule? Can we increase opportunities for choice? Can we minimize crowding? Can we make our high school hallways and our regular hallways at bell times, can they be dismissed a little bit earlier so they don't have to fight the crowds, which causes a lot of anxiety for them? Can we minimize noise? Can we schedule harder things at optimal parts of the day? I know some teachers, they wanted to get all the academics done first thing in the morning. But sometimes that transition from getting out of your bed in the morning, being yelled at by your mom to speed up and get to school faster, and then sitting at your desk and doing hard work is the worst thing you can do. Are there some things we can do, like having a soft start in the morning? Can we start with something more enjoyable before we move into the academics and the things that we know are hard for students? Can we also create a safe space? So a safe space is not the same as a timeout. Historically, in the past, you go to timeout and you sit by yourself in the corner in the hallway when you've done something bad. But a safe space is something that is neutral. It's something that we notice, oh, I noticed that you need some extra time. Can you go sit over there? Maybe it's a couch in the library. Maybe it's something in the hallway. Maybe it's beanbag chairs somewhere, depending on what your school is like. Can we create a safe space for students to go to if they're feeling overwhelmed before problem behaviors happen, so that they don't need to engage in problem behaviors to get a break, that they get this break before the problem behaviors occur? And in terms of behavior histories and relationships, are there some things that we can do as a school to mediate relationships, especially if there's a conflict at the school? Sometimes the interactions are within peers at school. So is there something that we can do for conflict resolution? At our school, we have a peer mediation team. So if you have an issue with another student, there are people in place that can help you, walk you through that process to kind of resolve that conflict. So hopefully you can get back on track. We also have a great team of counselors at our school that see students individually, but maybe there's also family counseling. Our counselors also sometimes work with parents, and we have parent education nights where we try to get parents involved and educated so that we can all be on the same page. Trauma-informed practice is also really important, understanding that these factors are in place and how can we be sensitive to the trauma and to the underlying things that we talked about being beneath the surface. Can we have a change of staff? Or maybe SEL curriculum, being able to teach social emotional learning within the school system, and so that students are able to be more equipped to deal with when these things are in place. The next area is withholding the antecedent trigger. Are there some things that we can do so that we can actually change the way that we present tasks so it's less aversive. So if there's a physiological condition in place, you know that that student in particular is tired, or they're sick, or they're not well, can we withhold that math test? Can we have them not do the work that day? Can they just do review work that day because we know there's things going on, instead of being strict with our culture and being saying, hey, we have to get this done today. I don't care that you had a bad night's sleep. I don't care that you're up all night because your parents are arguing. We're going to get this done now. So that approach doesn't really work. So are there some things that we can do if we know setting events are in place to withhold the things that we know are going to cause problem behaviors? In terms of ecological conditions, are there some things that we can do, like providing accommodations, things like reviewing the teaching before we get a test, giving visual supports, having a multiplication chart, graphic organizers? Can we use some of these things because we know that this is something that will be hard for the student? Can we embed student preferences? One of our students really loves horses, and just having horse stickers on her worksheet makes it a more fun worksheet than a regular worksheet. Can we chunk the assignment? Instead of giving 4 pages of math at once, can we cut that page in half and literally give them 4 questions, and when they're done, we can give them the other half of the worksheet? Are there some times that we can actually adapt the work and make it easier, simplify the questions? Can we scribe for the student? We know they're having a hard time and written output is hard for them. When we know that there's some things going on, can we write for them? Can we type for them? Can we use voice to speech? There's all of these things that we can use that can help decrease the likelihood of problem behaviors happening. And again, with behavior histories and relationships, if we are knowledgeable about things in trauma-informed practice and being sensitive, can we avoid the power struggles? Maybe using a calm tone of voice. And instead of using threats, using enforceable statements. When you do this, I will do this. Can we make sure that maybe on those days where there's lots of setting events going on, can we make sure that the EA that works for them that day maybe is the one that they prefer and they get along with? Because it's more likely that when that EA says to go do your work, that they'd be more likely to listen. Can we do that for that day? And lastly, I want to talk about increasing reinforcement. What are some things that we can do if we know setting events are in place? Can we increase reinforcement for them so they're less likely to engage in problem behavior? Can we address the physiological needs? Giving a snack break, using treats, and using them strategically. Can we lower expectations? Can we differentiate our reinforcement? So on most days, you wouldn't cheer for your student if they got their math worksheet done. But on the day that they're able to get through their math worksheet, when you know they haven't had a good sleep and you know they're upset because their friend yelled at them earlier, then we want to make sure that we really praise them because that was a big deal for them to hold it together. Can we increase breaks on those days? Can we use behavioral momentum? Again, embedding student preferences, having a soft start to the morning. And again, with behavioral histories and relationships, can we make sure that there's staff that are in place that they get along with on days that you know that's kind of a bad day? Can we provide those safe spaces where they can go, where it's not a punishment, and they can go to those safe spaces before they engage in problem behavior? So if all these problem behaviors still occur, then maybe it's important to look at what's maintaining the behavior. Is it escape motivated? Is it something just about band class that's so aversive and we can't change anything else about it that they need to get out of it? Is it attention motivated? Is it sensory motivated? Is it tangible motivated? Sometimes it could be one of these things, sometimes it could be all of these things. And so sometimes what we need to do is looking at altering the maintaining consequence. What's making the student continue to act in this way? And sometimes it's really complex and we need to ask for help. I know myself, I turn to Jenny Williams, this SCSBC, a lot of the times. Sometimes I even joke that WJD stands for what would Jenny do instead of what would Jesus do, because sometimes I think, what would Jenny do in this situation? And if I don't know, sometimes I call her and I say, I've got this situation, it's really complex, the child is engaged in this. It's really great having another person's input and being able to give some expertise in the situation. So what I want to talk about now is universal supports and accommodations. I just want to remind everybody that changing the environment, changing the setting, these things, you don't need to have an IEP. You don't need to be a student with special needs to access this. Universal supports means everybody. Supports made available to any student to foster inclusion of all students. So what I want to challenge you and remind you is that if there's a student in your class that's really struggling, maybe consider giving them presentation accommodations, which means letting them maybe listen to recordings instead of reading the text. Maybe getting them to learn from audiobooks instead of having to read them themselves. There's a lot of different things that we can do to support students who are struggling. And it might be simple as giving them more time on something, letting them know what they're going to be doing tomorrow, today, so that they can prepare for it. Some of these small things make a world of difference to our students. So now we're going to break into a little bit of a discussion time. These are some questions that we thought of. So in your areas, wherever you're listening, you can press pause, or so you can look through these questions and talk about them with the people that you're watching the video with. How does your school handle challenging behaviors? Would you say that your school is more reactive or proactive? What are some structures that are in place to help teachers look beyond the challenging behavior? Are they looking at what's underneath the iceberg? Are we focusing just on what we see on the surface? And what if you tried to prevent problem behaviors from occurring? What has been effective? What has been not? So take this time to talk about with your groups, whoever you're watching this with. And after the presentation, we'll be bringing in the EAs who will be talking about 2 students that we have at our school and how they saw these setting event and antecedent strategies support them with the students that they're working with.
All right, thank you, Vanessa, for the time and place. My name is Ripka, and I am one of the staff from Vancouver Christian School. So today, I'm going to share with you the strategies that I've been using at the school. So here is our friend. So his name is Isaac. He's 10 years old. And then he's in grade 5. He's diagnosed with Down syndrome, mild intellectual disability, speech apraxia, autoimmune, hyperthyroidism, and sleep apnea. So autoimmune hyperthyroidism is autoimmune disorder that cause one to have overreactive thyroid. And thyroid is a hormone that is actually control your body uses the energy at that day. So the symptoms could be you feel tired in the middle of the day, although you have enough sleep, and then irregular heartbeat, and also you feel the weight loss, although you eat a lot of food. So these are the symptoms. So this is what it looks like at the school. This is the problem. This is the tip of the iceberg. He's running away from me. He's running away from the other EAs. He's running away from his teachers. The other problem is a transitions problem. To recess and from recess. From inside the building to outside the building. From outside, go back to inside. There was a problem. From breaks to breaks. And then from one class to another class. So let's say it's from computer time to math time. There's a problem. And from math to art, there's a problem. So this transition problems occur at the school. Another problem is non-compliance to simple task. Pick up your paper, but then he doesn't do it. He will do it 1 hour later. So this problem's occurring at school. So this is the tip of the iceberg. So, but then actually there are more things that we need to see. This is what it is actually underneath the iceberg. So this is the study events. There are factors. It could be physiological factors. He could feel tired at that day due to his sleep apnea or his hyperthyroidism. He might have enough sleep. It looks like that he has sleep throughout the night, but he might not have deep sleep on that night. And then hyperthyroidism, he's prone to get tired easily on that day. Another factor could be ecological factor. At the school, he has few opportunities to make choices. At the school, the choices that he could have is not like, I want to do this versus I don't want to do this. But the choices could be like, I want to do the second page first versus the first page first. At the school, the students have limited choices on that day. The other factors could be weather. And it's Vancouver overall. It's raining all the time. And then it could affect his mood. It could affect how he's doing on that day, because it takes a lot of effort to put on his boots, to put on his rainy jacket. And then it also takes more effort to make friends, to play things that he wants during rainy days. That could be ecological factor. The other part could be like the schedule. He has different support staff. EAs, these amazing people that I work with have different styles in delivering their instructions. They have different rapport with Isaac. And Isaac needs to adjust on how to listen to their instructions. These factors could be also one of the ecological factors. Another factor is behavior, history, and relationship factor. I'm growing up with a big family. I have 2 sisters and 2 brothers, so my choices are limited. My friend, he has history of have a lot of choices at home, and it's okay. But then these choices, this setting event could lead to the problem behavior that is happening at the school. Another problem is also speech apraxia. It's hard for him to communicate verbally effectively with another staff. I'm trying to say what I want, I'm trying to articulate what I want effectively, but it takes a lot of effort and you don't understand me. Versus when I'm running away, I get your attention and you chase me. So all these factors could be the setting events for him running away from the adults. So here you go. So today, the strategies that I will discuss is his running away behavior from the adults. Oops. Yes, he's running away from the adults. The cause of his running away from adults because he wants to play. It's fun to play. Chronically, he is 10 years old, but then he's actually not there yet. He wants to play, and who does not want to play? So to eliminate and minimize the setting events, I would to make sure that he have enough sleep time. Another strategy that I've been trying with him is to provide fun times during recess. If he does not know how to, I'll be the bridge. I will facilitate how to have fun times with his friends. When he's successful, I will fade out myself. Another strategy that I've been trying is a lot of reminders of what to do next. So we are outside. What do you need to do when you're outside? When you hear the bell, we need to go inside. That is right, Isaac. So all right, let's go and play. You know the rules. That's what I've been doing with him. Another strategies that I've been trying is to provide time near the entrance door. This is a good strategy because it's easier for me to remind him, to redirect him, hey, that's the door. Versus when I'm having fun in the middle of the field, it's hard to guide him to the door. But then you can also have like fun at the field, but then towards the end of the recess time, you can bring him closer to the door. That's what I've been trying with Isaac. Another strategies that I've been trying with him is to provide activities that is not too stimulating. Yes, it's fun, but not too fun. We want to be mindful of what is happening next. It's hard to let go something fun, but it's too fun for all of us. I will have a hard time to let go something that is fun for me. So those are the strategies that I've been trying to neutralize the setting events. Another strategy that I've been trying is to let Isaac goes inside the building 3 minutes earlier. When you say that, hey, the bell goes off at 8:45, I will take him inside at 8:42. He will have the whole way for himself to minimize the crowding. And then it's less stimulating for him, it's more quiet for him, and then he's more focused of what he needs to do, and we can redirect him what to do if he, let's say, forgets what to do at that time. Another strategies that I've been trying is to give him extra attention. Give him lots of praise when he's always beside me. I would like to give association that when you're walking with me, when I'm beside you, it's more fun than you're running away from me. It's more fun when you're close to Miss A, because I can be funny, I can tell you I can give you lots of praise. We want to make that connection. We want to make that association. Another strategies that I've been trying is to remind him, to redirect him to do the task right away when he's starting to be off task. Let's say if Isaac is starting to wander off in his mind, he's starting to dance. Like, hey, you need to write your math test. You need to finish this sentence. When you finish this sentence, and I will have fun with you. Remind him right away, not 10 minutes after. 10 minutes after he's dancing on his own. Because the snowball, I always have this story of like the snowball is so big now, it's so hard to stop. So let's redirect him right away before the snowball is getting bigger and bigger. Another strategy that I've been trying is to increase visual supports. These visual supports I will share with you guys on the next slides. And then I will break it down for you guys. Another strategies that I've been trying is to increase my reinforcement when he's sick, when he's not feeling well. So I would give him breaks more often. I will give him like, hey, I will give you break 5 minutes instead of 3 minutes. I would like to be generous with him because I would like him to feel comfortable. And another strategy I've been trying to give him short nap. It's okay for him to take a nap for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and it's better for him to take a rest versus of like we are battling to give him these instructions and he's not ready to listen to our instructions. So yes, give him I gave him short nap before. Another strategy that I've been trying is to provide him with a lot of choices. Not the choices could be that, hey, can I do this math worksheets later? 5 minutes later, 3 minutes later. I will still finish this, but can I do this later? These choices could be like, hey, can I put this sticker, like horse sticker, or the wiggle sticker versus of, let's say, the truck sticker. So I will give him more choices. And then what I've been trying is to give him soft start in the morning. I greet him, he loves knock-knock jokes. So I greeted him with knock-knock jokes when he arrives at the school. I greeted him with funny high fives. Instead of high fives, I give him thumb high fives or like 3 high fives. All the fun stuff that he likes it. So I would like to make association that, hey, I'm tired, but I know I will get the support from my teachers, from my EAs. So those are the strategies that I've been trying with my student. Yeah, and it has been working. So this is these are the visuals that I prepared for Isaac. The first one is the schedule. So the schedule on the very right hand side there is the schedule to show him what blocks he's going to have next, and beside it is the time of that day. Where is he at that day? Let's say it's near the lunch, so I will draw an arrow there. Hey, you're near the lunch. So it will give him like a visual of like where is he at on that day. Another strategies that I've been using is expected and unexpected behaviors, but I print it out. So of contingency map, I call that. It's the map of like, this is what I will get when I do this, but this is what will I get when I do this unexpected behaviors. I like to put this on the wall because a lot of my students are visual learners. They are visual learners because the visual learners, text prompts, visual prompts, it stays. Versus our verbal prompts, it goes by really quick. It might be going from their right ear and then it will go left from their left ear. But for visual prompts or text prompts, it stays. It allows them to process what are you trying to say, Miss A? What do you want me to do? So visual supports helps it. Another strategy I've been trying with him is the token system. The choices that I gave him before was, do you want to use the small one or do you want to use the big one? Do you want to use the white one or do you want to use the yellow one? Make lots of visuals with different colors behind it. So the students they have power, they have choices. So they know that you are in the same boat together with the EA, with him, with the student. Another strategy that I've been trying is the check in and check out, it gives him a visual of like how is he doing on that day. Oh, in the morning, I was doing good. I listened to you, Miss A. So this is the visual that has been helpful. Another strategy I've been trying is to lay out the schedule of his schedule for the whole week. On Friday, I will see you, Miss A. On Monday, I will see different EAs, and it's Mrs. B. So this schedule allows him to prepare his day, to prepare his week. So these are his visual supports on that day. So thank you, everyone. I will give you the time to, well, pass the time to Crescentia.
Hi everyone, I am Crescentia Guana. I am a middle school EA at Vancouver Christian School, and the student that I'll be talking about is Andrew. Andrew is in grade 8. He is diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. He has intellectual disability, speech apraxia, severe expressive and receptive language delays. And to top it all off, he is 13 and is going through puberty. A very exciting time. So, this is the top of the iceberg, what we see. Not only are these behaviors observable to us as educators, but also to the students around him in the school. So morning routines for Andrew can be hard. Some of the behaviors we see are bolting. Andrew bolts, especially when there's a large vehicle outside. It's very exciting for him. When there's a garbage truck in the neighborhood, or when there are gardeners in the school property who have giant power tools. Some non-compliance behaviors can be seen when we are giving him directions. He closes his eyes sometimes. He lies on the floor, he sprawls out all over the hallway, and it leaves no space for anybody else to go past. And he also pretends to sleep. Very effective. Transitions are hard also. For example, transitioning from classroom to classroom, activity to a different activity, and Andrew engages in hair pulling towards his EAs and sometimes even students. And it can be quite scary for younger students, especially those who don't know him as well. And because he is in puberty, there are some self-stimulating behaviors that Andrew engages in, and it is very hard for us to pull him out of that, especially because we can't stop a good feeling of behavior from happening. If it feels good, why would he stop it? So, Andrew has many setting events, just like how we have setting events. I'm sure many of you educators know that our setting events is our daily cup of coffee. If we did not have our cup of coffee in the morning, the day is going to be a horrible day. Maybe I'm exaggerating. But for Andrew, some physiological setting events include him feeling tired. Maybe he did not have a good night's rest the night before. Sometimes he might be feeling sick and he's just having some of those symptoms, that sore throat, the icky feeling in the nose, but he just doesn't know how to express himself. And also when he's feeling hungry. Some ecological factors include having large crowds, experiencing loud sounds around us, and also when there are exciting events on the way to school. For example, mom could be driving a car and on the way to school there was roadside construction, and maybe he saw many flashing lights from the traffic police or the construction vehicles, and maybe they make very loud sounds, and that is extremely exciting for him. And also for behavior, history, and relationships, Andrew is minimally verbal. He is still learning to form proper sentences, and he is on his way. But for now, sometimes it is difficult for him to express himself and to tell us what he's feeling and what he wants and what he doesn't want. Also, we have a very large team of EAs working with Andrew. He has about 3 or 4 EAs working with him at the moment, and EA rotation could be quite tricky for him because he can't anticipate who is coming into the quiet room or the classroom to work with him next. And he has many different relationships with the EAs, the different EAs. And so it is very important for us to address all of these setting events before we, just to address all of these setting events, because when we see the behaviors, it's almost too late to go back to address the setting events because we're in crisis management mode. So the behavior that I will be talking about today is non-compliance to morning routines. For Andrew, some setting events we have eliminated and minimized include minimizing the crowd. Our school, the middle school wing, shares a hallway with the high school wing. So there are many students. Everybody is super tall. There are different smells around, and it can be very stimulating for Andrew. He can get very excited, especially when certain classes have band that day. So they carry their giant boxes of instruments, and he's interested to know what's in the box. We start off with a soft starts. So his parents could print out, most mornings his parents send him to school with a picture of whatever he is interested in that morning. It could be a picture of a fire truck. It could be a picture of a garden hose. And when he does come into school with that coloring page, he knows he has that coloring page in his hand. He knows that we are going straight to the quiet room where the lights are still dim, it's quiet, and he can just start coloring to prepare himself for the school day. And him being in a safe space, which is the quiet room, he associates being in the quiet room as somewhere that there's low demand in the morning, nothing bad's gonna happen to him, and he just associates being at peace in the school. So some strategies we use to, without changing the antecedent triggers, include offering visual supports. He has a calendar, a weather forecast, and the shape of the day. So with the calendar, he can anticipate what special activity is coming up soon, which date. For example, we just had Remembrance Day this week. And so he could see, oh, Remembrance Day, I'm going to remember the soldiers. I'm going to remember that I'm going to see lots of poppies. It's strange because it's only 1 week of the whole school year that he suddenly sees red flowers everywhere. The weather forecast sets him up for recess time and lunchtime outside. So he realizes, okay, today is rainy. So I have to remember that I need to put on my rain boots, and I can anticipate that it's going to be wet outside when I go out there and cold. The shape of the day is basically his timetable of activities that he's going to do that day. It helps him anticipate what activity is coming next, what he's expected to do, and not only do we include the instructional activities on the shape of the day, we also put in his preferred activities. So he can see, oh, after I do my assignment or this hard task, immediately I'm going to have a special event. Maybe I'm going to do more coloring. Maybe I'm going to do some traffic duty. He loves traffic duty. We also embed student preferences throughout the day. So this could look like choosing which activity he wants to do first, and also the choice of prize that he wants, or even which coloring page he wants to take to class, or what color pencils or markers he wants to take to class. And also, as his EAs, we make sure that we are at least 1 arm's length away from Andrew, so that in case he is about to do something he's not supposed to, like pulling hair, or maybe pushing down the garbage bin, we can make sure that we use our bodies to block him, and we are always on standby. The ways we increase reinforcement when setting events occur is that we address his physiological needs. Andrew is extremely food motivated. And so on days that are really hard, maybe we get an email from his family in the morning saying, it took us a little bit longer, we're coming late to school. It took us a little bit longer to get him ready. We know that it might have affected him already. So we make sure that we have an edible token system in place just in case we need to whip it out at any point. Because he is extremely food motivated, he can see, oh, okay, I can have access to a little cereal or raisins today because I did something great. Some ecological conditions that how we reinforce is that we lower expectation. So maybe instead of asking him, maybe instead of having him answer 5 questions before he can get access to a reinforcer, maybe we just reinforce after 2 questions. So we set him up for success so that he can continue to feel happy that, oh, right, I'm doing something good. That's why I'm getting all of these fun things. We also increase breaks for him and on days that are hard. So if we notice that he's a little bit fidgety, even though he is not telling us that he needs a break, we can say, hey, I noticed that you are working really hard. Maybe let's go for a walk around the school, or let's go look outside the window and see what vehicles we can see outside. We also increase opportunities for choices in the reinforcers that he wants, or even the activities he likes to do, and also soft start transitions. So instead of going from art class to social studies class, during that movement from one class to the other, maybe we are walking around the school before we actually enter the class, or maybe we do enter the class, but we start off with an exciting coloring page that he really likes before actually engaging in the class itself. So here are some of the visual supports that we use for Andrew. On the far side of the screen, if you're looking at the slides, it will be the left side. That is his daily visual of the day. So at the top, we have the day, we have the season, the weather, how it feels, and his visual schedule of what it looks like, what he's gonna do that day. In the middle is his EA visual of who is going to work with him that day. We usually go over the schedule with him so he can anticipate who he's going to see that morning. These are all the different wonderful EAs that work with him, who cover breaks for him and hang out with him. On the right side of the slide is his token board, and we have a picture of what he's working for. We usually ask him, what would you like to work for today? And then he would say, oh, I want to print a page, or I want to do school jobs. And so he can access tokens whenever he does something great. And after the countdown, he gets access to what he chose. So yeah, thank you.
I hope that those stories and case examples were just informative for you. It was some things that you could actually do for students at your school without changing a whole lot. So instead of trying to fix the problem, fix the child, there's a lot of things that we can change just about our setting that we can increase the likelihood that the child will have a good day at school. So yeah, in conclusion, I just want to remind you of that visual of that iceberg. A lot of what we see at school is that tip of the iceberg. And instead of spending all the attention focused on addressing the behavior and adding in punishment and consequences, let's look at what's underneath the surface. There's so much going on. Like we talked about before with the stress backpack, there's a lot of things that kids are coming to school with. So setting event strategies, I imagine ourselves, we're just trying to take things out of that stress backpack. What are the things that we can take out? What are some things that we can change about the day to make their backpack a little bit lighter so that when they show up at school, they're able to follow through with the things that we're asking them for? So when their storm meets our calm and we avoid those power struggles, we can have co-regulation. So I just really hope that you're able to take a few strategies from today and try some of them with your students. I'm sorry that we don't have time to do that Q&A part of the presentation, but if you have any questions for us, feel free, our contact information is up there. And yeah, thank you for being an audience and listening to our presentation today.